pay attention to such things. This cloud of care then was reported on the Virginia news to be nothing or an extraterrestrial invasion. And here I had covered it live on my show, but the news, as they reported it, and you can see I have these news clips linked to my site, the news said, "What was this? We don't know. We asked everyone." And then, so they interviewed people on the street, and they're all go, "Oh, it looked like aliens. It looked like aliens," right? And so I'm like, wow, they're really just playing this up, aren't they? Because they could have darn well known that Wallop's flight facility was launching a rocket that day. And it looked just like the cloud or the Norway spiral minus the spiral. So when we got to the Norway spiral, and what we find is this rocket being launched by a Russian submarine out of the White Sea. Now, they don't claim, now, first of all, they didn't claim that they had launched. They had put out the information saying, look, we're going to launch a rocket on this day. And that just happened to be the day Barack Obama was showing up for his Nobel Peace Prize for extraordinary efforts and president of the world and all that. And they launched an ICBM from a Russian submarine at the White Sea. Now, next thing we know, the Norway spiral is forming. And I might mention that CERN was at world record levels at this point, punching holes into the other dimension. Don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't think so. I just had to throw it in there because it was all going on at once, So as the rocket came in, you could clearly see in the spiral that it was emitting a cloud out of the side of a rocket spiraling into the spiral. But the spiral itself became so dynamic, and you see this blue spiral pouring out of the central spiral or the main spiral. And even the scientist, Dr. Dimphel, who was researching this thing, said, well, you can clearly see that it is aluminum oxide because that's the base element of sapphires. And what you're seeing in that blue spiral is a sapphire glittering in the sunlight. So what we have to add, because the cloud of care seems so similar minus the spiral, when we look to the Norway spiral, then we see that the ISCAT antenna array there in Solvabard was pointing directly where that blue spiral is coming from. So it seems that they launched an aluminum oxide cloud and then pulsed it with their ionospheric heater, or the ISCAT array. And then perhaps, now if we go to speculation, we can look to the Bell projects of the Nazis, and they had these Mercury working in two spirals inside of this bell to once again punch holes into the other dimension or to have transdimensional entry. And so we can couple this all together and say that we're looking at perhaps somebody trying to open a Stargate.
Well, even CERN admitted in their own, I don't know what it is. The guy was talking about CERN and how wonderful it was, and I guess he's one of the head scientists, and he even said, yeah, we might pull out some transdimensional beings out of this, we might get more than we bargained for, but we're going to open a door
and something might come through.
Something might come through, exactly. And that's what I'm concerned with, is that they're going to pull something through that isn't going to be good. Kind of like that South Park episode where they Imagination Land, where when they broke down the barrier between good imagination and bad imagination. It's going to be something like that.
Well, here's my take on that, and tell me what you think, Freeman. If they do open something up and something more older than us comes and comes through, then in order for them to get to that stage of evolution, for them to get to the stage of being able to cross over into these portals and things like that, they have to have achieved a higher consciousness. Because when you start playing with nuclear weapons and other things like that, all this technology that is required in order to do all of this, you are eventually going to blow yourself up if you don't have the right consciousness. So anything more evolved than us has to be good, in my opinion.
I would hope.
Yeah.
No, is that a completely wild thought? Okay.
There are thoughts in that direction, but we can't say that everything's benevolent, and especially high-tech societies. No, I can't say that would be the case. But on certain levels of transdimensionality, perhaps entering into other dimensions up into fifth and sixth, seventh density, as they call it, would probably have some sort of spiritual barrier where you did have to achieve. But there has to be still fourth density and fifth density and perhaps even sixth density beings. And I tend to relate these things to the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah studies to try and understand more what they're showing me in the Tree of Life, and also to try and get an idea of the different levels in the dimensions.
I'd like to also add there as well that it's a popular misconception that a race that's advanced technologically must also be advanced spiritually. If you really start understanding how things work from an energetic perspective and realize that it is an energetic universe, then beings that were significantly advanced spiritually probably wouldn't really have much of a need for technology.
Ah, very true. That's a very good point.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we have a few more questions from the chat room. What about the chemtrail program in general? Where does it fit in with the overall agenda? Are they preparing the Earth for something, or is it just weather manipulation? I think it looks like they're trying to keep us from being able to see what's out there.
Yeah, or all of the above. Really.
Yeah, it's just a
now, consider back in 1996. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
It sounds more like a multifunctional tool, though.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Back in 1996 is when I spotted my first X in the sky. Now, having grown up in Orlando, Florida, I was quite used to rocket launches. And so when I saw this large X coming from either side of the horizon, I thought, what a strange rocket launch is this? So these trails immediately stood out in my mind as some sort of unique event, not something that I just thought were trails. Now we've had 14 years of having these chemtrails over our heads. It was clearly stated back in the Middle East in the first Gulf War that they were feeding barium to the insurgents, and you can clearly see that they were using chemtrails to do so. It was openly admitted that they would feed this barium to the people because then you could be tracked. Now, it's very curious that there are two main functions that I have sussed out when it comes to chemtrails. The two main ingredients being aluminum and barium. And aluminum, you take this into your system, and now you're a receptor, an antenna for their electromagnetic frequency devices, such as HARPs or iSCAT. Then, when you add to this as well the barium, then you are now showing up on a very particular radar known as the X-band radar. And as curious as it would seem, if not at all, because everything's on the schedule, right when Katrina was coming towards New Orleans, they were shipping the X-band radar on an oil rig, a very large oil rig that could not go through the Panama Canal, so had to make a trek all the way around South America to be positioned right up next to the HARP facility. This X-ray radar, this X-band radar, was used in the Hawaii catastrophe. And so right next to HARP, now you have a big buckyball X-band radar that can track all the people who have breathed in this barium. So now you must realize that you shine like a beacon on a radar. They cannot determine who is who. That's probably where the chip comes in, but they can absolutely detect when people gather. And so if people think they're going to just run and hide or do something when, say, something nefarious like FEMA camps becomes a reality, they're actually going to show like a beacon and be able to be manipulated by the electrofrequency magnetics. Now, on top of this, as a rainbow gathering goer, one that goes out to the national forest with 10 to 20,000 other people and builds an intentional community for a month, we can clearly see that the chemtrails come right over when the gathering begins. I usually show up about 2 weeks early, and you won't see a chemtrail at all. But on the official startup date, there they are out in the middle of the woods. At the Gem and Mineral Show in Tucson, Arizona, where a collection of people that live on nothing but money, on cash, which is untraceable, people from all over the world making lots of money selling gems and minerals, they chemtrailed heavier than I'd ever seen, and it was the first time it rained in Arizona in 5 months. Everyone got sick. I told them all what was going to occur before it did. I said, you're going to feel lethargic, you're going to have achy joints and feel flu-like symptoms. This is heavy metal poisoning you're dealing with, not a virus. And so next day, everyone was grabbing my DVDs because they knew I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
We used to track these things in movies. So there you have it. On top of it, you can add the HAARP frequencies as they put these things out, and they are used as reflection devices. They're used to punch holes in the other in the ionosphere. All of these type of tricks, trades. It gives them the power of God so that they can bring on the end of the world and make it appear so. They can cause earthquakes, floods, and all of these things. So that's where we're at in those type of situations, HAARP and chemtrails together.
Here's an interesting thought for you, and I'm not trying to revert the topic to the Anunnaki or anything like that, but as you know, the Sumerian tablets say that our purpose here was to mine gold so the Anunnaki could repair their atmosphere. Well, couple that with chemtrail technology, and then it all seems possible.
It makes sense. Except we're getting the cheaper version.
Yeah.
Well, I have another question. And either of you feel free to comment on this, but how do we start... Where did it go? Here it is. How do we start this community activism? What would you suggest to everybody out there? A question from the chat room.
Well, what I've started doing is I've started having community meetings, and these meetings have they function as a support group for people who are awake or are waking up, and they also are used to stimulate positive conversation aimed at finding solutions and ways of creating ripples throughout the community. I firmly believe that if you can wake people up to the fact that humans are actually good and you can give to these people, if you give to people unconditionally, I really truly believe that you will shift their perception of reality. So what we've done with these meetings is we've started, obviously we've got a local newsletter that we're starting that we're going to be distributing free around the community. We've also started a market stall. And these are just little things, but we started a market stall where anybody who has anything that works that they don't need anymore, they can bring it to us and we'll give it away to someone. It's a free of charge market stall. Come to the store and we'll have a little contest where you can throw a ball in a bucket, and depending on which bucket you get it in, you can pick from any shelf here and you can take anything home. We've got TVs, PlayStations, I mean, things that I'm not really into, but anything. I mean, whatever you've got that you think someone else would like, bring it to us and we'll give it away. Another thing we've started is a local permaculture initiative. Now, we've got a guy from the meeting who's actually registering this as a business so we can have tax write-offs. So we've gone around and we asked the local community, would you like to be involved in this permaculture initiative? How much tax do you pay? Could you give a little bit to us so that we can give it back to the community rather than you giving it to the government? And we've started this permaculture initiative whereby the best garden put in a 6-month period. We give you 6 months to put a permaculture garden in your yard, and the best garden wins $10,000. And even if you don't win the $10,000, then you get a permaculture garden in your yard. And we collect this $10,000 from the community, from people who want to participate. And everyone's been jumping on board. Everyone's really happy to do it. So this starts creating a culture of giving. It starts helping people understand that people aren't actually bad. We're actually pretty good. The only thing that really controls us is our councils and our governments. It's all about control. Everything they do is about control. As I said earlier, it's all about dividing the community. So our biggest asset is a unification of the community. This is the best thing we can possibly do, is to get to know your neighbours. Start giving to your neighbours. All the stuff that we collect, all these trinkets and toys and things that we get, and we end up having so many that don't fit in our house. We've got to go and buy a storage shed to put all our stuff in there. We never open it. We never look at it. It just sits there. Why do we give this to people? Give this to people who can use it. Because life isn't about having the most stuff. It isn't about the one with the most wins. It's about how you interact with the people around you. That's what's important in life. And we're trying to put that back in community. So that's one initiative that I've started personally.
Very nice, very nice. I have to ask you, though, what happens when the inevitable happens? For instance, I was at Jack in the Box the other day, and I know, I don't eat fast food on a regular basis. It was just one of those things. But I decided to do a little experiment, and I paid for the guy behind me. And I went back to the Jack in the Box a little bit later, and the guy told me, you know what, that was really cool what you did. It went on for about 20 cars. But then that one guy, of course, he just took it and said, oh, okay, thank you, bye. And just stop the whole chain.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get people that'll do that. There'll be people that'll take advantage. I mean, there's one in every crowd, but it's just simply a product of their environment. That's just the way they've been brought up to feel and the way they've been brought up to be. And I believe that with the permaculture initiative, I think this will put food everywhere. I think it will put food all through town, all through your local area, so that when the system does crash, which it will, then there will be food everywhere. And that is going to be a huge boon for society. I think planting gardens and building community is the best thing you can